It's the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Here's your host, Matthew Ablin.
Hello and welcome to Year 2 and Episode 13 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This month, we're funking it up with local band Akita. Akita is a funk quintet whose members include Patrick Buckley on drums, Zach Farrell on bass, Charlie Lamprich on sax, Sam Farnham on lead guitar, and Dan Hamalainen, who pulls double duty on trombone and rhythm guitar. Akita is a relatively new band, having only officially formed in late 2017, but they're quickly recruiting a following for their brand of funk. This month, I'm fortunate to have with me one of Akita's founding members, Patrick Buckley. All right, thank you, Patrick, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. On behalf of the whole band, we appreciate you doing this.
Oh, thank you to the guys from Akita. Tell them thank you very much. So, are you originally from the Charlotte area, Patrick?
Nope. I was actually born in upstate New York, and then we moved to Gastonia, which is, about 25 minutes outside of Charlotte, and grew up there from the time I was, about 4 years old until I went to college, and then just moved to Charlotte actually this past October. I'd lived in Charlotte once before, and then moved, and then now came back.
Oh, okay. And what brought you back?
Music. There's not, you can't really create a burgeoning music career in Gaston County, North Carolina. So
you had to move closer to the city?
Yeah, it's the closest spot to where there was a scene and there were gigs and everything, and there was just going to be more opportunities.
Okay. So you're the drummer of Akita.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what got you into the drums? I mean, there's a certain attraction to everybody to certain instruments. What got you into drumming?
In sixth grade, where I went to school at that time, I don't know how they're doing it now, but the way that you went about getting into the band program was it was either going to be that or chorus. And I was like, I don't want to sing. I can't do that.
As every young boy does.
Right. And ironically enough, now I wish I had, because if you can keep good timing as a drummer and you can offer harmonies, you're never going to run out of work.
Yeah, that's true.
So they would give you the sheet and they'd say, okay, pick your top three that you'd like to play. And I was like, drums. And then I think second was trumpet, and I don't know what the third one was. And I just got really lucky that I was able to get into the percussion program.
Okay.
So I started doing that. I don't know. It looked fun. That's why I wanted to. It wasn't, one particular. Well, I shouldn't say that. Buddy Rich, world-renowned jazz player. I guess that was probably the first thing that inspired me to play. Just seeing him play, there was so much energy and momentum in him. It was like, man.
I mean, Buddy Rich is old school. Where did you learn about Buddy Rich? Because I mean, he's even before my time. But when I was a kid, because I'm a few years older than you are, he was on the Muppet Show.
Yeah, I've watched
Silly
all
enough,
that stuff. Yeah.
I caught him on the Muppet Show. I was like, that's Buddy Rich. So how did you get turned on to him?
Well, I'm 30, so a lot of me like studying drummers and things started to happen. As far as the drum set goes, I didn't purchase my first drum set, which I bought. Parents did not buy it for me.
Worked for it.
Yeah, when I was 16. But I think when I was that young, there was a story actually about my dad and his parents, not him. They had gone to see a performance with Buddy Rich, and there was some sort of interaction with my grandfather and Buddy Rich that maybe wasn't that great.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it made me like, oh, that's kind of funny. Who is this guy? What's this about? Right. So I just started, trying to figure out who is this guy,
Yeah.
And then I can't remember if it was I guess at that time it would have been a VHS tape.
Wow.
That I had got a hold of, or somehow figured out who he was, and then when I saw the whatever performance that was, it was just like, oh my God, that looks so much fun. What, how can I do that? and then once I got into 10 years later, once I got into playing drum set at 16, then at that point, had the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how I started learning a lot, because I was self-taught. Again, I'm 30. The first time I had a real actual, I guess you'd say, formal drum set lesson was when I was 26, and that was with Rick Latham, who's a phenomenal funk and R&B player.
Okay.
And he's played with B.B. King is probably one of the most notable acts that he's played with. Juice Newton, a lot of these just phenomenal artists.
Is he in Charlotte?
No, he's actually, now he lives, I want to say he lives in Italy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's one of these guys that has had a very, very successful career. And he went to school at ECU, and then he graduated from there and went on to the University of North Texas, which has a phenomenal music program overall.
Yeah.
Especially their percussion and drumming program there. And while he was in school, he was actually writing his own book about advanced funk rhythms.
Wow.
And a lot of respect for that guy. So anyways, it was, when I was younger, 16, really starting to get into the drums, I had one friend who he and I are still friends to this day, and he just showed me, he played drums, and he just showed me a basic kind of beat, which then took, forever to learn. And because I didn't have a lot of natural talent for the drums, I really had to work at it.
Tenacity goes a long way, man. I feel exactly the same way.
So I feel like it has kind of I don't know, it's weird. I feel like the talent has almost developed with the skill set over the years. But it was a lot of looking online. It was like a whole lot of YouTube stuff, and it was really neat because now looking back at the time, there were very few drummers that were putting out videos on YouTube or anything like that.
Sure.
That was really just a thing that was starting. So I got lucky and started, I would just constantly, I'd be on this website called Drummers World or Drummer World, and I would just study the drummers on there and watch their videos and go watch interviews with them, and just started just eating the stuff.
Right.
So anyways, that's how the getting into drumming thing happened.
That's great. No, because when I was a kid, you had two things. You listened to the radio and tried to figure it out, or you listened to recordings.
Yeah.
But when I started playing, I was in my early teens. They had just started to come out with, not that they didn't have guitar magazines back then, but they'd have tab in the magazine so you could start to learn the songs. Yeah. And VHS tapes, they were expensive, but they had just started really putting all this stuff out where you could buy whatever, Vinnie Carmine Appice's drum book. Drum DVD or CD, VHS tape, and you could purchase that.
Yeah.
And he'd show you some stuff. So that's really neat. That it's interesting to get a younger guy's perspective on
how I went about it. Right.
Yeah.
Totally different approach.
So what had you been doing? We'll fast forward a little bit. What had you been doing before you got involved with Akita? I know there's a whole little story of stuff that happened before you put together Akita. Can you fill me in about that?
Yeah. So I played at 16 and went on, kept playing, went to school, got out of college, came back to this area, and at 26 is when I really made the decision that, okay, I think that I could do this. I think I could do this full time. I think I'm starting to develop enough of the know-how, not only about the craft, but how to go about presenting yourself as someone who's trying to be professional. And so I started just playing with other local groups, not really starting to form or take lead of my own thing like I have with Akita, but just started playing in churches. There's a really good buddy of mine, Todd Henry, he was the one that I guess you could say booked me for my first ever church gig, and that has been really good. That in the Southeast, if you're younger and you're wanting to play drums and you be compensated for it and just become more professional and be able to be able to gig and be able to get more experience doing it, then playing in churches is a great way to go about that.
Yeah, there is a rather large church music scene down here that I've noticed.
Oh yeah, and because it's not even within the contemporary worship style, which is very popular right now. So
Yes.
groups like Elevation that are central to here, even within those genres, you're still the actual grooves you're playing are still gonna span genres. So it's not like you're just kind of stuck in one thing.
Right.
You know, a 16th note, pattern on a ride cymbal in jazz as opposed to doing it in contemporary worship. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's nuances and differences, but I mean there's things that are crossing within that genre, and that's always fun to me. Is
right.
Have being able to play, not feel like you're just stuck into kind of one thing.
Sure.
So anyway, started playing in churches, and just started trying to research the area and find places that I could play, like open mics.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Smokey Joe's a lot.
Yes.
Whole lot. Still go up there. I got a little girl now, so that takes up a lot of time, but not as much as I used to. But that's a really good spot if you're young and you're wanting to hone your craft. Go up there and get embarrassed a couple times,
sure.
and that will really start to steer you in the right direction, because those guys are great. They're all professional musicians. That's what they do full time. And I've never been up there and anyone that was there that I wanted to just talk to about playing or about the industry or anything. Super down to earth, cool cats. And then they're all up to talk about all of it, because a lot of them are older. So
yeah, I
would imagine for them, it's like they kind of get enjoyment about sharing what they've learned and everything. Yeah. So just started trying to find other groups to play with. I think I counted one time, and it was like, and this was when I was 26, after I had made that decision, okay, I'm going to try and like really go after this thing. To 6 months later, it was like 68 different either people or bands that I had either ended up like getting a gig with or subbing at a church for one time, or I would go on Craigslist. I had, little flyers I would put up around town.
You're just attacking it, weren't you?
Yeah, I was just like, man, I gotta figure out how to do this thing.
That's fantastic.
And I would put stuff up there that really I knew I wasn't quite prepared for. It'd be like, can play these styles and do this stuff. And then if someone called me for it, it's like, yeah, that's cool, no problem. Like, get off the phone with them. I'm like, okay, shit, I gotta go learn this.
Yeah, but there's no better way to learn than to play with people better than you. Most musicians,
oh yeah,
you want to get better, you play with somebody better than you. You're not going to get better playing with people who are below your level, and that's not knocking anybody.
No,
it just is. You throw yourself in the water.
Yeah, if you're batting 60, then quit hanging out with people that are batting 60 and go to the ones that are batting 90 and 100.
Yeah, you have to.
That's where you're gonna get better. The immediate thing I was doing before Akita was. It was a group called Hiphop Orchestrated that was curated by a really good friend of mine, Kia Moore.
Okay.
Who is I would call her a social visionary. And what I mean by that is she has some very, very intriguing ideas about how different parts of a city can be put together to, I guess, to help other areas of the city. So the thing that she was doing was she had this band, and we would play a combination, like we would take a hip hop song, but then add an orchestral sounding piano piece into it.
Okay.
Or we would take something that was really more of an orchestral piece and then back it up with this like super chunky groove, like more of a hip hop kind of feel. So we were combining these two elements. And her whole concept with that was to, through the music, try and get people that, economically speaking, would probably never interact with each other, end up in the same room as each other. And it was working. It was going well. And I hope that whatever stage of her vision that is at now, it's still going well for her. But, that wasn't my vision. I loved it. I love her. I love what she's doing. But it was kind of twofold. It was like it got to a point where I started to have my own ideas of what I really wanted to do as an artist and what I wanted to put together. And then on top of that, it was like, 3 months before my daughter was born, and I knew that was going to obviously take up time.
Sure.
So I gracefully bowed out of that, and she kind of gave me her blessing, and then went on to try and do my own thing. So after I left that, then the goal was really trying to like get picked up. I started to do some videos, and I would put out videos on, Instagram and hashtag and @ bands that I wanted to play with, and
Right.
just trying to promote myself as a player more. And throughout that time period, I was studying with a guy. We would do Skype lessons most of the time, once, sometimes twice a month, with a phenomenal person, not just player. And his name's Greg Scrilloni. He lives in LA. He lived in New York for a long time. He went to Berkeley. And he played with, I don't know if you're familiar with the group called the Disco Biscuits.
No.
They're a really, really big act. I don't know where they actually formed, but every year now they have their own festival they put on called Camp Bisco. and it's massive. It's like, it's at the point now where the festival, I would imagine the festival hits probably 5,000 people every year.
Wow.
And they've been doing it for a while. And they had a side project called Conspirator that he was a part of for a year. And that kind of helped raise him up to the next level of of where he was trying to be in his career, and get him a lot of exposure. So I was able to learn from someone who not only had phenomenal technical abilities and facilities about them with actual playing, but he'd like been there, done that, played with a professional touring band for a year and a half. So I could glean a lot of knowledge from him about that. So he was always pushing me, do the video thing, man. Like if you're not with an established act and you're trying to get out there, you have to realize that today it doesn't matter that you don't live in one of these cities. You can put up a really good video, albeit you have to do it like 30 times.
Right.
But when you can start to create traction for yourself online, and you're putting it in front of the people that you're trying to play with, it's at some point something's going to click.
Well, video is very powerful. I've learned that I don't want to say the hard way, but a couple of weeks ago I was putting up some video on my own website, and it never really struck me. I had sound files up there for songs, and then I put up this video, and I was just like,
yeah, you get more excited about it.
Wow, I'm like that. That's really, I didn't really think about it, but if it's done well, if it's a decent, looking clip, I mean,
right.
You don't want total junk up there, of course, but yeah, if you're going to put things out there for yourself looking for gigs, it shows what you look like, which
is important.
It is important. If you're going to be, a metal drummer, you got to look like one.
Yeah.
If you're going into funk, you got to look like if you're jazz, you got to look the part. And because a mainstream artist they might be looking for somebody. You might be it, but if you're not going to look what they might need, you might not be the
especially
person.
if it's a very, very large act that is if it's out of the indie realm, then they're going to be like, I had an interview one time with the drummer for Carrie Underwood.
Oh, wow.
And that was really, really neat. And he was telling me some cool stuff I didn't even realize. He was like, "Oh man, you need to, you should write off everything." He's like, "I write off my hair products because that's part of the look that I have to have." And I was like, "Damn, that's smart." But him saying that just made me realize, like, yeah, you can't. Her drummer is going to look a certain way,
yeah,
and he better, or she, whatever the case may be. So, anyways, yeah, that definitely plays a part, and the video thing is good. So that I didn't do it long enough to get any true results from the video aspect. So our bass player Zach, how that whole thing started coming together was he posted something. I didn't know him at the time, but he, through Facebook's algorithm or whatever, I ended up seeing his post that said something about anybody know any good rap tunes to listen to get some good bass lines, because I'm trying to just learn more genres of music. And I chimed in. I said, well, really, if you're wanting to pull those bass lines, then you need to go back and listen to 70s funk records, because that's where they're coming from. and he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Because then he'd listen to the songs, and it's like, yeah, that was from, this Cameo album, and that was from this, this groove came straight from whoever, Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Sure.
That's so much of so much of hip hop, musically speaking, was primed from funk and disco music, more funk than disco. But I mean, a lot of that stuff, the samples, the James Brown drummers, they're like the most sampled players ever because of 90s hip hop. That's where so much of that stuff, derived from. So that's how that happened. And then he and I met up and started jamming together.
Okay. And that's the how Akita started to get.
Yeah, that was the nucleus, I guess. And I was telling Mark in the other interview that that wasn't the plan, but I guess I'm kind of glad that it started with the rhythm section.
No, that's fantastic.
Being a funk band.
You need that tight rhythm section together.
Yeah, so we had, it was good that when our sax player Charlie came on board, it was nice that Zach and I, we'd really only met up maybe like I'd say like 7 or 8 times. It was just nice to have that little bit of established history with each other. We had a couple ideas for tunes and things, so that was cool because Charlie, I didn't know this, but he said when we were talking the other day, he was like, "No, I didn't know what to expect when I showed up, and like you guys already had some things not polished, but you had some ideas that were really starting to come together, and so that was." I guess in his eyes, he saw it as like, oh shit, okay, like they're really trying to do something. They're serious. They're not just playing.
Right.
It's not like just for whatever's sake.
So you have the nucleus that formed. How did the other guys? How did you recruit the other fellows for Akita that are currently in the band?
Yeah. So my girl Bree turned me on to Charlie, and she'd been telling me for about a month and a half, like, you really need to check out this guy. He's really good, and I've met him. He's like a super cool guy. So we got him over there, and then Sam, our guitar player, and Dan, who plays trombone and also plays guitar, but not in the band. He just plays trombone. We got them as like a package deal because I think they had been putting out their own ads on Craigslist, as had we. And then I ended up finding their ad, or no, they ended up finding the thing that I had posted. And I want to say at the time it said looking for a guitar and trumpet player. I think that's what we put out there. And they actually live together, and they've known each other since like 3rd grade. So that was just really cool.
So one nucleus between the guy,
and guys, another one, right?
And another one. That's nice, actually.
Yeah, so that was neat. And I'd say maybe not so much the very first rehearsal, but after the second rehearsal, everyone was like, "Hell yeah, all right, this is it. This is going to be cool." Nice. and we started really getting excited about it and just starting to become friends with each other,
Was the funk style, was that a progression from something, or was it something you all just were kind of had to head into right away, that this is the kind of stuff we want to do?
That was my mindset, and that's what I told the guys. I remember the first phone conversation I had with Charlie and Dan, because when Dan saw our ad out of him and Sam, he was the one that called, and he and I spoke. And I said to both of them, I said, this project isn't, I'm not doing something where I just want to bring in people to like cut a record.
Yeah.
I want to find people that are similar minded, that are willing to put in the work to be a band that has longevity, and we're going to be together for 15, 20, 25 years. I don't want to just do this and have it be something that fades out. And on top of that, I was pretty upfront about, I want this to be a funk band. And that's, the ad that I put out was saying, spoke about Lettuce, and, these are people that were influenced by, that were not trying to do the same thing, but, this is the vein in which we're going.
Sure.
So it was definitely my goal to form a funk band.
Okay.
That was the direction that I wanted to go, because I found my calling. I started when I was younger. I was like, learn some jazz, learn some rock, learn some bebop, learn some, Latin grooves, this and that and the other. And then over time, you will find the things that you not only like to play more, but that you naturally listen to more.
Sure.
as a music listener. And they just coincided. It was like, yeah, man, like listening to a live Earth, Wind and Fire album is like, if that doesn't get you freaking amped up, I don't know what does. So it's just, I love playing funk music, and I really enjoy. I'd say it's probably funk and then hip hop, because with hip hop, there's it is so great to see a hip hop artist with a live drummer. It's this super in your face raw element that you have, and it just adds this whole other feeling to the whole show.
Yeah.
And I absolutely, love that stuff. And the two cultures, one kind of formed out of the other. Mm-hmm. So in a linear format, it's like one came right after the other. So learning about different producers and different players on records and things, that all ends up kind of melding together. And it was just in my head, it was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I love playing and listening to. Singer for a very, very short period of time, Maury, and we had started to write this tune before we even had Charlie or Dan or Sam in the band. And then once I decided, it was like, okay, Ryan's phenomenal, but it's just not the right fit. I'm going to try and find some other people, which I'm sorry, Ryan, he's never going to let me down. That wasn't a clear-cut conversation. I just started looking for other people. So there you go, Ryan. I admitted it. Still have a lot of respect for that guy. But then when we brought on the other players to what now is Akita, in that kind of swing time period, I don't know. I guess Maury couldn't make one of the rehearsals, and then like maybe there was a week where we didn't get together because it wasn't a super structured thing at that point. I had the same vision, but I think to them it was like, oh, this is kind of neat. There's some people getting up and playing music. And then it was like she fell off the map, and we completed this song, thinking we're gonna have lyrics to it,
right? And
then we had our first show, which was a house party at my place. And I tried to hit her up like 4 or 5 times before then, like, hey, we have this show coming up, and we'd written other songs without her. And it was like, we'd really love for you to sing on it. And to this day, I've never been able to get a hold of her again.
Wow. Even with social media and everything, the internet?
It was through Instagram that we were messaging.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it was, that we just named the song Maury. Because that was like everything involved with that song was based around having her there,
right?
So yeah, we just couldn't get a hold of her. So
goodness,
if we can ever track her down, we'd love to put her vocals.
If you're listening, Maury, you better get in contact with Patrick.
Yeah, that'd be good. So that's the whole backstory with that thing.
Now I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, where did the name Akita come from? Because the first thing that comes to mind for me is the dog breed.
That's it, man.
That's it? Yeah.
That's it. I have a very boisterous Akita boxer mix. So he's got like the boxer build, which is pretty, but even beefier.
Right.
So it's like a very strong dog. And anyways, it was like a couple days before that house party, and we were sitting around talking after rehearsal. And we're like, oh shit, we don't have a name for this thing. And the dog, whose name is Rex, was hanging out in the garage with us. And Charlie looked at him and he said something. And I thought he was asking what the dog's name was. I said, Rex. He's like, no, I know that. What type of breed is he? And I said, oh, he's a boxer in Akita mix. He just said Akita. And we were all like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And so it just kind of stuck. It was a neat name. I haven't found any other bands that we would have to worry about that have the name where it's like,
right.
if eventually we're going to trademark the name. You should do that type stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
So, it starts with an A, so it comes up in listings first.
Yeah,
that was just a bonus. So that's how the name came about. And it, man, some of the other names were like, oh, so glad we did not.
A name is hard to come up with.
It is. But I think that one was good. It's short. It's concise. The lettering makes for neat graphic design work to be done.
Sure.
I feel like when we give the logo to artists or designers, I would like to think it's fun for them to. It's not something that's really difficult to work around, or it's like 3 different names, which, and again, at the time we weren't thinking about a lot of this stuff, but you put Akita on a t-shirt as opposed to, the whoever, and the whoever's. It's like, Jesus, that's a lot of text, So it's like, as far as branding and promoting it has made things, I think, a little bit easier. So that's, again, just a nice bonus about the name.
Very cool. All right, so we were just listening to the tune Hot Step. What's the writing process for Akita? Because you being the drummer, do you come up with a beat? Does somebody come in with ideas? Do you guys just come together and just jam it out? How does that work for you guys?
All of that.
Okay. All right.
So it's ever evolving how we write songs. Charlie, our sax player, has very good insight into the composition of the song, mm-hmm. just the structure, overall structure of the songs, and he's helped. I'd say more than anyone else individually, he's really helped a whole lot with that. And seeing how he puts it together, I think we all, even if it's subconsciously, kind of take cues from that and start to understand. Oh, okay, why does this make sense to do in this place, and why this doesn't make sense to play. But a lot of times it could start from a voice memo. I'll message out a groove that I come up with, and I'm like, yo, y'all, I just got, I was playing to this record and I, came up with this idea off of it, and I'm super amped about it. See what you can do with it. Or Zach might send a voice memo, and he's like, all right, I got this bass line. It goes like this, ba-boom, da-doom, ba-boom, and just that's how the stuff starts. And we also sometimes will get together, and I'd say I guess this is now it's almost a year the band's been together. Probably the first 6 months, the first 10 minutes we always got together, it became not even a discussion point. We just started playing.
Right.
Not a certain song that we were rehearsing or working on. We would just start playing. And a lot of songs, I'd say probably most songs that we have formed out of that. And it might be that we played for 10 or 12 minutes, and out of that whole thing, we're all like, yeah, that was pretty much like garbage. But Sam, this guitar thing you had in there like 3 minutes in was really great. And you just start to pull and piece things together. Sure. And I think that over time, the hope is that all of us get better as writers, and get somewhat more of a process in place. But I think it's important not to put. I'm a very process task oriented type person, but
that's good.
I think with songwriting, it's not necessarily always good to do that because you're being creative. So you have to let things come as they're going to come, and not rush it too much.
I think that's a good way to be. You've got to. I mean, it's a craft. You have to work on it and do it.
Sure.
But I think there's also that creative point where you just say exactly what you said. We did a lot of playing. That's not really a song, but those parts, let's hold on to those and come back to them at another time. Yeah,
I'd say that's how most of the writing ends up happening is picking and pulling different parts that we've heard each other do before. Like right now, the last 2 days I've just been anxious about today because we'll have rehearsal today, and I know Sam has a couple different licks that he's come up with, and all of us are really like anxious to hear them because it's like we want to see if we can make it into a song. Sure. It's exciting.
So, any plans for Akita to put out a recording, or I mean, I know you guys has a couple of songs that you've released. Are you working on a full length album or an EP or anything?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a little while.
So young band, you guys are only a year together, right?
Yeah, October of 2017 is really when we first got together.
Okay.
So yeah, not quite a year yet. But the hope is that by late spring, early summer, we'll be putting out the first album and backing that up with a tour, just a Southeast tour, so something simple, 15 or 16 dates spanning like 3 weeks,
right?
Try and pack in as much as we can, and then go push the record.
Yeah. So what do you guys have coming up for Akita?
Sure. So things are always kind of in motion and changing. November 2nd will be at a great spot called Divine Barrel Brewing. And as of now, that's the only set date that we have. With the breweries, you have to, when it gets into the fall and winter months,
yes, the
calls aren't going to come in quite as frequent.
Because here in Charlotte, it's outside.
Yeah, that's right. We're in the Southeast. So the idea is that hopefully when people are listening to this, if you go look at our page right now in November, you're going to see some other dates listed at some local venues, or I'm sure at that point we'll have some things booked out of town. Some out of town dates.
That being said, how do we get in touch with the guys from Akita to see where you're playing around town if we want to go check you out?
Sure. Best place to go would just be our website, which is akitafunk.com.
Okay.
And that has everything on there. That's got videos you can check out. Our SoundCloud songs are embedded on the site, so you can listen to it there. We have our all the tour dates that are listed there. That's the one-stop shop for everything. We need to get our T-shirts up there. That hasn't happened yet. That's a whole process, but that's pretty much the catch-all for finding everything.
And if people are liking what you're doing, how do they book Akita? How do they call you to find out about getting you to come to their establishment to play?
That'd be booking.akita@gmail.com.
Awesome.
That's the email address, or shoot us a Facebook message. We reply pretty quick.
Okay.
To booking info.
And I'll put in the show notes a copy to your booking and your webpage and any information about you guys so everybody can get in touch with you.
Yeah. And for anyone that, you're just liking what you're hearing, the social media tag is @AkitaFunk. That's how you can find us on Instagram or Facebook. Or if you just type that into Google, you'll get a decent number of search results that populate. Awesome. So that's nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, much success to you guys, Patrick. Hopefully I'll get out real soon to the next show, and I'll check you guys out.
That sounds great. We'd love to have you out there, man.
All right. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye. And that will bring episode 13 of the Queen City Music Podcast to a close. If you are a musician or otherwise involved in the music scene here in our fair city and would like to be a guest on the QCMP, reach out to me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you can find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Play, among other places. So keep a lookout. Until next month, get out there and support your local music scene. Bye.